Welcome to the latest edition of Beyond the Arc. I'm John Gonzalez alongside our NBA insider, Bill Ryder. Bill, you and I very excited for the return of Champions League before we get to basketball. Good luck to your Barca squad tomorrow. Yeah.
I got bars and stuff all over the place. Paramount Plus, get on there.
There you go.
Root for Barcelona. Nobody likes Inter. Who's rooting for Inter? Nobody is. Come on, Barca. They can win this thing, John. Let's go.
We also have Arsenal and PSG tonight. I was in London for the last time the Champions League match that Arsenal beat PSG earlier this season. Different PSG team, but still very cool match. But yes, go and check all that out on Paramount Plus. All right, later on in our show today, the Warriors squeak past the Rockets. The Cavs absolutely demoralized Heat culture. I'm wearing my fun Cleveland is magical shirt on behalf of the Cavs and all of the Clevelanders out there. The offseason has begun for both Miami and Memphis. We'll get into a little exit interviews. We'll look ahead to 3 potential closeout games tonight, plus a pivotal Game 5 matchup between the Clippers and the Nuggets. A lot of fun stuff happening tonight in the NBA. But first, less fun. As we found out yesterday, Bill, as we feared and suspected, Dame Lillard ruptured his Achilles on a non-contact injury in Game 4. About 6 minutes into the first quarter, he was helped off the court. He did not return. He immediately grabbed at it, Bill. We all feared the worst. The worst has come down here. Just a huge, we're going to get into like what this means for Dame, what this means for the Bucks, but just a huge bummer here that whatever prospects and hopes that the Bucks had to pair Giannis with Dame, that has gone by the wayside here.
Yeah, this John Horst gamble has gone as badly as it could. We already knew, John, and we've discussed a lot on the podcast, that shipping Drew Holiday out to Portland as part of this deal. Obviously, he got rerouted to Boston. Was one of the factors, sort of one of the secret ingredients that made Boston a force of nature. Maybe it takes some of the sting out a little bit if eventually the Lillard-Giannis combo works. I don't even know. Make a conference finals to some degree. That's never going to happen. They're not going to succeed as a duo, probably, right? It's hard to see this working going forward. As we talked about yesterday, and we're going to hit here, I mean, this is Damian Lillard missing a lot of time. Next year is probably a wash. And it's amazing to think that with all the hope and hoopla that there was when Lillard came into the mix a few years ago, the final conclusion is going to be Lillard plus Giannis may not even win a playoff series.
Yeah, the highest scoring duo in the NBA this season. Last year, it took them a while to figure out how to play together. And by the time they did, Giannis was out for the playoffs and boom, their first round exit. This year, they played better together. Both of them thrived. We thought that Dame might be washed. He wasn't. He was an all-star. He looked really good. But then 15 games, he misses the last 15 games with a blood clot. He comes back, didn't look like himself in games 2 and 3, but he still played a bunch of minutes. And some people will say he rushed back and he shouldn't have done that. The blood clot was in a different leg. But still, you don't want to see him end with an Achilles. And as you said now, Bill, he's about to be 35. He's owed $54 million next year. The chances of him playing at all next season, given how late in the calendar this has happened in the league calendar, are slim, which means you're looking at age 36 Dame Lillard coming back on the final year of a player option at 58 million, 58 and change at 36 years old. Woof, that's going to be really rough. I don't know if the Bucks can move him. Even if they can't, then you're stuck with an aging Dame. This sucks all the way around.
It does. By the way, I think it's fair to say that he may have rushed back, and I think you can say it without blaming anybody. Not going to blame Damian Lillard for being a competitor. Not going to blame the Bucks, but he wasn't able to really be conditioned. He wasn't able to do any activity until just before his return. And the best sort of and most depressing, but the best comp I've heard from this comes from a wise person that I work with named John Gonzalez. When he went down, you texted me and Aaron Larsoul, and these words jumped off my screen and hurt me. They physically caused me pain because I like Damian Lillard on a personal level, and I like the Bucks organization a lot. I'm not a big Doc Rivers guy, but I know people in the front office really well. You could say that Dame might be the new Bradley Beal, and it really slapped me in the face for the reasons you just walked us through. He's going to be 35. He's going to miss a bunch of time. Next year is almost certainly a loss. There's no guarantee the level he'll be at coming off post-ACL surgery and rehab. And being that age, he's got that massive, massive player option he'll have to pick up a year from this upcoming summer. And look, Bradley Beal used to be a great player, had a lot of individual success, but wasn't able to win because he didn't have the right team around him when he was in Washington, is by all accounts a really, really good guy. I mean, the comps are they're pretty on point, and it's a terrible way in an unfair way for a career to turn if that's the way that it's turning.
Yeah, I hate to talk about players as assets or contracts, but there is that like business of basketball component here, right? And I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think I'd rather have Bradley Beal, because Bradley Beal at least has 2 functioning Achilles right now. And he hasn't been good at basketball, and he's only been intermittently available, but in theory, ostensibly, he'll be available to play basketball at the beginning of next season, whereas Dame Lillard is probably going to miss all of next season. So now all of a sudden, in a 3-1 deficit here, facing the Pacers tonight in Game 5, the Bucks are looking at a 3rd straight first-round exit, Bill. They didn't have Giannis last postseason. They're not having Dame for much of this postseason. Okay, the results is still the same here. So the question that everybody is posing, and that we'll ask now, is whether or not we're looking at potentially Giannis's last game tonight, or last playoff series at the very least, in Milwaukee. He's lost 8 of his last 9 playoff games that he's played in, Bill. And absent, I guess there's a chance. There's a chance that Giannis, who has before had the opportunity to say, no, I want to spend my entire career in Milwaukee. Maybe he will say that. Maybe he'll stand up and go, being in Milwaukee for the rest of my career and pulling a Dirk Nowitzki is more important than me going and winning. But he hasn't said that previously. He's had opportunities and he hasn't. So I think this thing, once the series is over, it kind of feels like that conversation is going to begin in earnest, because it kind of already has.
So you're absolutely right. We don't know what Giannis is going to decide, and he's going to decide. If Giannis wants to stay, the Bucks aren't going to move him, right? And they can sell. Look, it's a business. They can sell tickets with Giannis there, even if they can't win playoff series. The people I've talked to in the last 48 hours, 24 hours, again, they don't know. They are certain in guessing, right, in projecting what they sort of know. They think Giannis will be somewhere else next year. The conventional wisdom out there, because John Horst is the GM, who, again, these things are complicated, but if you just look at the Dame trade and the Drew Holiday trade and the Chris Middleton for Kyle Kuzma trade, the GM in Milwaukee has not covered himself in glory. He just got extended, as you know, John. And the thought out there and talking to people with the Bucks is that's because that organization thinks John Horst, the Bucks think John Horst would do a good job in a rebuild. So certainly in Milwaukee, they think there's the potential or likelihood this is going to happen. I think Damian Lillard's injury is the final nail in the coffin for Giannis's time in Milwaukee. And barring some miracle turnaround, not just in this series, which I don't think is coming, Pacers are going to win the series. They'd also have to pull a miracle in the next series, the Bucks. They're not even going to play in, almost certainly. I think we're talking in a month or two about whether Giannis is going to the Rockets, or whether it's going to be Brooklyn, or whether the Heat have enough to try and go get him. I think for Giannis, it makes sense, and he has talked about he wants to stay in Milwaukee. He has said in the past, if he feels like he can compete, I don't think he's going to feel that way. He has talked recently, John, about how he wants and covets and needs 2 rings. I think that was also a pointed message to sort of lay the groundwork for this. I think it makes sense for Giannis. And frankly, I know it's sort of counterintuitive to think that a team like Milwaukee, a smaller market, should trade away a generational talent, but they have dug themselves into this hole. And I think the only way to get out of it is to move Giannis for what they need in return to reset.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, you don't want to see somebody like Dame or anybody suffer an injury of this magnitude. But I think through the injury, it provides almost this moment of clarity that they otherwise would have been denied, because if Dame doesn't get hurt and they go into the offseason, they're convincing themselves this is the only path forward, because we're going to discuss the assets that they have or don't have, and how they could potentially, John Horst, rebuild around Giannis or make this team better, because Bobby Portis is a free agent and Brook Lopez is a free agent, and they've got 80% of their cap through 2027 tied up in Giannis and Dame and Kyle Kuzma. So they're really hamstrung there, but by Dame going down, I think you're just forced into the obvious, which is, I mean, I guess we're going to wait for Dame or for Giannis to put his hand up, but maybe you'll help him raise it, because it's time for him to move on if you're just talking about what's best for the organization long term.
I think you're being realistic in Milwaukee, and the Milwaukee fans, by the way, and I'm from that part of the country, are very put out by this, get very offended by this, feel like national media are trying to trade Giannis Antetokounmpo. We're not trying to trade Giannis. I can't speak for John. If I could wave a magic wand, I would have Giannis stay in Milwaukee, because I'm from Dubuque, Iowa, right at the border of Wisconsin, and I love a generational talent in that part of the country. But the question isn't whether Giannis should go. He should go. And the question isn't even whether the Bucks should move on from him. For reasons we just talked about, they should. The big question for Milwaukee is, will Giannis, if he leaves, do it in a way where he gives John Horst 5 teams or 4 teams. If there's a bigger list of teams, then Milwaukee can get an amazing return. And Giannis is a classy guy, and I think if he leaves, that's how he'll do it. What you don't want if you're Milwaukee is for Giannis to say, this has worked to varying degrees. Ask Damian Lillard. It doesn't always work. You don't want Giannis to say, I want to go here and only here. If Giannis allows the price to be driven up because there's a couple suitors that he approves of, Milwaukee can reset, and at least if they do it properly, everybody can win.
Let's take a quick break here. And then on the other side, I want to discuss a little bit what some of those potential teams might be that we could identify that would be good landing spots for Giannis, who might have the assets for it. And also for the Bucks fans out there, I understand you're watching this program and Bill and I are talking about maybe trading Giannis, and you don't want that to happen because he's your guy. But we're going to dig down a little bit on why that probably makes sense, even though it might be painful. And we'll look at some of the assets or what they don't have to trade and why this looks like it probably would be the preferred path if you're just looking at it objectively for the Milwaukee Bucks. We'll do that on the other side. This is Beyond the Arc on CBS Sports Network. All right, welcome back to Beyond the Arc. A little breaking news here. According to Shams, the Sacramento Kings and interim coach Doug Christie are finalizing a multi-year deal to make him their new head coach or next head coach permanently. Finished 27-24 with those Kings, Bill. Nothing's stopping them now. Nowhere to go but up.
I had very little optimism when Scott Perry became the GM that this would work. And whatever little optimism I did have has been erased. Why? I don't. Yeah. This is so uninspiring.
We'll see how it goes for the Kings. I think I'd rather be the Kings, though, than the Milwaukee Bucks, Bill, as we continue this deep dive into the Milwaukee Bucks and John Horst, so we were discussing on the other side before the break, like what the situation looks like objectively, right? It's Bucks fans don't want to trade Giannis, and I get that as an emotional thing. I get that from an entertainment perspective. At the very least, as you mentioned, you could sell tickets around Giannis and just have a team that would be middle of the pack in a bad Eastern Conference and probably be a first or a second round out, and that would be it. But if you're looking at like how to reboot this thing on the fly, the reason why you probably want to do it is, in addition to having, as I mentioned, all but 20% of your cap tied up to Giannis, Dame, and Kuzma through 2027, Bobby Portis and Brook Lopez being free agents. Their allotment of picks, they are in dire straits here. 2025 first, this year, goes to the Nets. Next year, the 2026 first, Pelicans have swap rights. In 2027 first, goes either to the Pelicans or the Hawks. 2028, that goes to either the Blazers or the Wizards via a swap. 2029, Blazers or Wizards straight up. 2030, Blazers have a swap again. They don't have a first-round pick available, Bill, until 2031.
I mean, by the way, those credit David Griffin, who's now no longer the GM in New Orleans, and certainly Joe Cronin, who was the guy that obviously held out to not trade Lillard to the Heat. Those picks could be really valuable. I mean, there's a world where those are extraordinarily valuable. Made out like bandits. That is a dire.
Bill, we crushed when the Blazers made that deal. A lot of people were like, "This isn't enough." Whatever. Now I'm looking at the Blazers haul, plus Toumani Camara was in that deal, who is going to make maybe all defense, second team all defense. That kid looked fantastic over the second half of the season. Yeah, I'd rather. We're going to get into who'd you rather be. I'd much rather be the Blazers.
I do find it sort of strange and just instructive of how weird the NBA is that Joe Cronin and John Horst, who made the trade, and one guy got the good end of that deal and one guy didn't, both got extended in the last 6 weeks. It's all about managing your bosses in this world, man. It's not about anything other than managing up. That is what you just described with those picks is utterly and totally dire. And it's why, to your point, the emotionalism, the connection that's real between that city and my family there and Giannis, you have to move on from Giannis. I know Kevin Durant's much, much older. It's different. But, sometimes you have to move on from greats. It makes sense for the Suns to move on from Durant. And frankly, maybe it doesn't, but you could entertain maybe having to move on from Devin Booker because you are saddled with Bradley Beal for a while. Sometimes you have to move on from great players to be able to rebuild. I mean, even Damian Lillard we're talking about. It turns out that the winner of that trade was the Portland Trailblazers, not Damian Lillard. It felt like it was backwards, right? It felt like when Dame was forcing his way to go somewhere else, Dame was going to go off into glory and maybe win championships, and poor Portland was going to be stuck sort of falling apart. They've got a pretty nice future. They've got a nice team that finished strong, and those picks you talked about, That's what Milwaukee's aiming for. You have to do it right. You have to pull it off properly. But if you can bring the right return and then use whatever draft picks are part of that to draft properly, I think you can have a much brighter future for the reasons you just walked us through than if you keep Giannis and just limp through the next 2 or 3 years.
You and I went through which teams we'd rather be. You just brought up Portland. I'd much rather be Portland. Yesterday, we established we'd rather be the Wizards and the Jazz and the Hawks for all the reasons you just said, because they're young and at least they have a plan. They've got assets. They understand what they're doing. I wanted to run past 3 teams that were probably the most maligned in the NBA this season. So the Suns, the Sixers, and the Mavs. Would you rather be the Bucks or the Suns? Oof. With everything that entails, all the drama, the pieces that you have, the assets, and we'll get to the other 2 in a second. But the Suns, they look like they're going to trade KD in the offseason, so at least that's a start.
2-part answer. If I am the general manager of one of those teams, if I can control things, I'd rather be Phoenix because I can trade Durant and I can trade Booker if I choose to. And if I trade both those guys, not that there's a huge return, maybe Bradley Beal waives his no trade clause and I can just get him out of there because he doesn't want to be a part of that team. If I'm a fan, I might rather be the Bucks because I don't think Matt Ishbia will empower anyone to properly whatever you get for Booker, or not for Booker, for Durant and Booker if you move him, which, by the way, many people would not. If Ishbia is still in charge, I'm not sure it works. I think Milwaukee
the ownership
can
group
succeed.
there is not. Yeah, I totally agree with you. And also, I mean, as you mentioned about managing your bosses, I mean, John Horst, when the push alert came in mentioning John Horst, I expected it to be John Horst has been dismissed, and instead he got an extension. And so, maybe this was one of those situations where ownership actually looked at this thing and went, oh man, this is going to be a tough rebuild. At least John's in place. Let's just work with him and have him reboot this thing.
Little NBA insider insight into how miserable that job can be sometimes. I know people in Milwaukee really well. I've known them for years. And I was talking to somebody in the organization, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks ago, basically trying to get them to tell me if John was going to be fired, if John Horst was going to be fired. This is someone who knows and likes John. And I got, no, man, they love John. Everything's great, which is what you always get, right? Every time, you know how this works. Like, okay, man, sure. And I just dismissed it as, okay, he's full of it. I'm not going to report that. When the report came out, I was like, oh, that was
congrats.
I don't understand.
Congrats, John.
How? Yeah, congrats.
I think maybe, like I said, maybe just because it's such a difficult rebuild, they looked at it and went, let's just have John do it. The other 2 teams, the Mavs and the Sixers, would you rather be the Bucks or the Mavs? I would rather be the Bucks than the Mavs for sure, just because of all the fan fallout. And I don't even know what to make of the Sixers.
I mean, I think you'd rather be the Mavs even in a vacuum. Giannis is much more valuable than Anthony Davis, which is stunning when you just revisit what they didn't get for Luka Doncic, which we discussed a ton. The Sixers are tricky because I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I can't do it. Does Embiid have a full season in him again? Does Embiid ever play a full complete? Then I'd rather
forget about full season. Forget about full season. Does Embiid play half a season? Can he play 41 games? Play
50 games. Yeah, 50 games in a full playoff slate ever again.
I would bet against it. I just don't. I can't believe that in a year where he came off of the Olympics and went into the season claiming that he was in career best shape and had shed a bunch of weight, right? Shouts to everybody who's always in career best shape going into training camp, that he had an absolutely disastrous year, as did Paul George and that entire organization. So yes, I'd rather be the Bucks. Always, I'd rather be anybody but the Sixers. Let's talk a little basketball. Last night, we had the Rockets and the Warriors. Bill, what a game. Game 4. The Warriors end up winning at 109-106. The Warriors are now up 3-1. They are 25-8, Bill, when Jimmy Butler plays. He played last night. And, Bill, this man was hobbling all around. He has like a lower back injury, like an upper glute area injury. He's running around there with like one glute. Played 40 minutes, 27 points. 14 points in the fourth quarter, including a huge rebound on a Şengün miss on a free throw. And then he made some free throws at the other end. He got into it with Dylan Brooks. We got the full playoff Jimmy experience last night. Yeah. I don't like Dylan Brooks. And then he kind of goes, we're competitors. This is, by the way, so the last 2 games are for me the recipe why I think you have to put the Warriors on the list of teams that can win an NBA championship. And you can certainly rank it Thunder 1, Boston 2, Cavs 3. But I just don't think it's, for me,
I don't think it's a sure thing that the Warriors can't win the way that it is, I don't know, for the Milwaukee Bucks entering this postseason for the reason we saw in the last two games. In game three, but I think wisely sat Butler out, gave him a little more rest, and Steph Curry carried that team. I think he also had 14 fourth quarter points, whatever it was. And then Butler comes back. He's clearly fighting through the pain. And when they need playoff Jimmy, they go and they get it. And Steph didn't have a bad game per se, but I think he had only 13 shots. It just shows you the space that Steph creates for Jimmy and the ways in which Jimmy can go and win you on not on his own, but Jimmy won that game for the Warriors. And if you have a Warriors team that is the best defense in the NBA, and they do since Butler got in the lineup, and Butler can win you a game or two late in games in playoff series, and then Steph is still Steph, they may not be favorites when you get further in these playoffs, but we've seen last night and in game three, I think, John, why Golden State for me is the next most likely team after the obvious ones to win the whole thing.
Yeah, these last two games, I think, were really instructive on just the Warriors having that playoff experience that we talk about and why that matters. Right. Because you didn't have Jimmy Butler in game three. And I thought, okay, here's the game where the Rockets steal one in Golden State and now they're going to make it a series. And they didn't because when Jimmy went out in game two, you and I and everybody else went, oh no, that Golden State offense really ground to a halt. And it looked like the offense pre-Jimmy Butler. And then Steph Curry put his hand up and went, no, you idiots. I'm the best shooter in the world. So they won game three. And then last night, when they kind of put the handcuffs on Steph a little bit, and he only goes for 17, and Draymond did Draymond stuff, and he somehow ended up with his fifth foul with 8 minutes left in the third quarter. He got a tech separating Dillon Brooks from Steph. He got a flagrant one. Somehow, only Draymond Green could end up getting a flagrant one with his legs akimbo on top of Tari Eason. Nobody would ever end up in that position. The whole point here is that all of this stuff like swirling around in that kind of game where the Warriors are getting destroyed, points in the paint by the two big men when they're going double big with Şengün and Steven Adams. The Warriors find a way to win that game, and that's something that the Rockets obviously, Bill, are still learning.
And by the way, the Rockets also, and it's sent Şengün right at Draymond at a critical end of the game play. And I mean, Draymond's he's still a winner, man. I mean, the box score doesn't always tell the tale. Do you see him try to get into the Rockets huddle? He's a piece of work, and you can love him or hate him, but you can't deny he punched his teammates 2 years ago. He's a lot, but he's a part of that they know how to win equation that you're talking about.
There's one other person who's part of that they know how to win equation, Bill. We're going to take a quick break, but on the other side, I want to give this guy his flowers because he deserves it, and he often doesn't get enough credit on this show. We're going to talk about the night that Steve Kerr had on the other side. This is Beyond the Arc on CBS Sports Network. All right, welcome back to Beyond the Arc. A reminder, you can get us wherever you find your favorite podcasts. Please download, subscribe, and leave a review. All right, Bill, on this show, I am frequently forced to defend one Steve Kerr. Our podcast producer, I take the position as the Steve Kerr champion. Our podcast producer, Aaron, is a big Warriors fan and is often maligning the good name of Steve Kerr. And I just wanted to point out that last night, I thought Steve Kerr did a pretty good job. Steven Adams was eating in the paint while Draymond Green was off the floor with 5 fouls. They go to a hack and Adams strategy. I thought that was smart. He made some other changes in game that I thought were pretty good. Podziemski was going off last night in the absence of Steph Curry really doing well. But then afterwards, Bill, Steve Kerr had an all-time great quote in the locker room, and I just wanted to run this past you.
Hey, fellas, I'm going to utter some words that have never been spoken before by anybody on earth. Buddy Hield, you set the tone defensively.
Yeah, for that alone, him because he's taking shots at Buddy Hield. By the way,
I mean,
you can't.
That was excellent.
You can't crown yourself the champion defender of Steve Kerr. You're so nice. You don't go after anybody. I mean, you got to get meaner.
Fair enough.
In order to get you're too kind. By the way, Steve Kerr is a man manager. I don't think is ever in doubt. His ability to create a culture, manage a locker room, and Steph helps with that. And that has real impact and real value. And really, I think if you talk about Steve Kerr just making adjustments, not in game, like coming up with game plans, being innovative from a game 2 to a game 3 or game 4 to a game legit. I think I actually just like sort of pushing your buttons on this, but producer Aaron really hates him. And there is
really hates him.
There's a sizable, it's sort of weird. There's a sizable percentage of Warriors fans who loathe Steve Kerr so much, considering the fact he has been the coach of 4 championship level teams. It is, in some ways, a psychosis.
Olympic gold medal
perhaps.
team. Yeah, I mean, I think
right.
I just
barely though.
I think if you
he did not cover himself in glory on that run.
But I would say when you talk to people who have played for him, they enjoy playing for him, and his teams are successful. That's basically my baseline there. But anyway, Steve Kerr, he gets full marks for the Buddy Hield crack last night. Also, in the post-game presser, he was like needling legend. You know Ray Ritter, the legendary PR man for Golden State. He gave him a little burn. Like Steve Kerr was feeling himself last night. So shouts to Steve Kerr. All right, let's move on to the other game from last night, Bill, which was the appetizer. And boy, the Cavaliers absolutely walloped the Heat. Game 4 blowout. They won by 55 points, Bill. The Cavs sweep the series 4-0. It is the largest clinching win in NBA playoff history. The Heat are the first team to lose back-to-back home playoff games by 30+. They lost game 3 by 37. It is also the largest point differential in a 4-game sweep in NBA history. The Cavs beat the Heat in total by 122 points, Bill.
By the way, you are our CBS Sports HQ NBA beatdown insider, because every time there's a lopsided playoff game, you just happen to be on by yourself. I had a personal thing I had to take care of yesterday, and I was thinking about you as I was following that game, and just what do you say? I mean, what an indictment. What did you say? Like, what did you even say on CBS Sports HQ?
I think that, Heat culture is down bad, right? I'm wearing this Cleveland is magical shirt here because the Cavs ran straight through them. I don't think it's so much, a positive commentary on the Cavs, although the Cavs obviously took care of business, as it is a massive indictment of the Heat. I mean, here's an organization that really puts itself forward as we do things the right way. We find players. We're always competitive. Hey, we're the first 10 seed that ever got out of the play-in. Okay, what did that get you? You just got steamrolled. And I think that there was a little bit of papering over what actually happened to the Heat this season, and especially after they traded Jimmy Butler, because they got out of the play-in. And people went, okay, the Heat could actually do it again. Well, guess what? Since trading Jimmy Butler, who, by the way, is up 3-1 in his series and looked awesome last night after coming back from injury and was, jousting with Dillon Brooks. He had a really good night, while right before that, the Heat got steamrolled. 1-2-3 Cancun time, Bill, and they are now 14-25 to finish the season since trading Jimmy Butler. That is not great.
There's a level of arrogance here that led them astray. You never know what you report that's going to suddenly go viral. A while ago, before Jimmy Butler got traded, I quoted a Heat executive or a Heat source, whatever it was, saying, and they believe this, that they thought that if they traded Jimmy Butler and got some pieces in return, John, that allowed them to be competitive in the Heat culture way, they thought they could compete with anybody. They thought that they could compete with the Boston Celtics. And that quote, which one of the aggregation sites, I think NBA Central, picked up, just pops in my feed with people arguing with each other and going at Heat fans every time something like this happens. And obviously that happened a lot last night. And it just reinforces this, I think, question that has to be talked about that people don't want to have. And my friend George Sedano, who I like a lot, is on my radio show a lot. He hosts a radio show here in LA. He's from Miami. I said this to him a few months ago and he got offended. I think it's time to start talking about whether Pat Riley's no longer the guy, because Heat culture and Heat way is really a way of saying the Pat Riley culture and the Pat Riley way. To your point, John, they traded away Jimmy Butler and didn't get the right return. They are barren in terms of the talent they need to compete, even in a lesser Eastern Conference. It's higher at the top, but it's not that competitive, certainly 4 on down, and they're not going to be able to be on that level. This is not the first superstar that Pat Riley's gotten sideways with. Got sideways with LeBron James when LeBron left and took shots at him. Took shots at Jimmy Butler last year in the postseason press conference. Part of the reason they had a falling out. Got sideways with Dwayne Wade. So for me, the big takeaway here isn't just how bad they are. This might be an organization that needs a reset at the highest levels, and that's hard to do when it's a legend who's in charge.
I'm glad that you brought this up because, I was thinking about it, that Pat Riley this might have been one of Pat Riley's worst jobs that he's ever done in his NBA career, because he set this whole thing up for failure. He got into this argument with Jimmy Butler where he not only antagonized Jimmy Butler, but basically like doubled down on it by saying, I'm not going to pay Jimmy Butler. Okay, well, you should have traded him. And then he said, I'm not going to trade Jimmy Butler. And then he said, oh, well, I'll trade him, but it'll only be to certain teams. And then he just decided to move him for whatever he could get. He made a complete hash of this thing, and he tried to lead us to believe that Tyler Hero was going to be the guy. Well, Darius Garland called him out and was proven right in this series that how do you win a series? Just go with Tyler Hero. That was absolutely correct. I like Davion Mitchell. He was kind of an afterthought in that trade, but he's never going to be the guy on a team. I think he can be a super useful piece, but you're basically now looking at a team moving forward with Tyler Hero and Davion Mitchell and Bam Adebayo, and I don't think that is enough. It certainly wasn't enough this season. Let's take a quick break. On the other side, Bill, because you brought up Pat Riley, I want to play some sound from Bam Adebayo's post-game press conference last night where he talked about Pat Riley and how critical this offseason is about to be for the Miami Heat. We'll do that on the other side. This is Beyond the Arc on CBS Sports Network.
What needs to change? I don't know. It's going to be a lot of changes this summer. Just from my point of view, understanding how, the guy with the silver hair works. So just be prepared for that.
A lot of changes coming this summer, Bill. I don't know that it's going to help. I mean, let's see what the changes are. But right now, I was thinking about this Heat team as currently constituted. I think Bam is right that their changes need to happen. But Pat Riley's the guy pulling the levers. And for the first time in a very long time, I'm not that confident in Pat Riley. He has done it over and over and over again up until this fight that he got into with Jimmy. And since then, it's been disastrous for them. I was thinking about where they slot next season. Would you have, I mean, they were 10th already in a really weak Eastern Conference. Where would you put them among like the Hawks, the Bulls, the Raptors, the Sixers, the Bucks even?
I mean, low. And by the way, let's like, again, I think Pat Riley is amazing, but how has he done it over and over again? He has brought in stars and he's paired them with people that he's drafted, but brought in Shaq, right? Shaq was not drafted by the Miami Heat. Dwayne Wade was, but brought in Shaq, brought in LeBron and Chris Bosh, brought in Jimmy Butler. And by the way, every one of those people, Shaq, LeBron, and now Jimmy Butler, left in a way that, like, we talk about the Jimmy Butler divorce. There's also these divorces from Pat Riley and the stars that he brings in. And we hit on this with Giannis. If you're a superstar, if you are Kevin Durant and you want to go somewhere, if you're Giannis and you want to go somewhere, if you're someone I'm forgetting who might be on the move that wants to reset, do you really want to go to Miami? And you have to make the numbers work. So it's not, right, you're going to have to send out maybe some of these guys that you would want to play with. They're not in a position to rebuild. To your point about Pat Riley not being trusted, I don't see how he has the ability to sell a roster, a team, a vision, or a recent history to say nothing of his issues with past stars to future stars who would want to go to the Miami Heat. There are better options now than Miami in a way there weren't in the past.
I wonder how long until we see a Brad Stevens situation with Spoelstra moving out of being a head coach and taking over the organization. It's just something to monitor because this was a disastrous end to a really ugly, terrible season for the Miami Heat. Speaking of disastrous ends to really ugly seasons, Bill, the Memphis Grizzlies are also in the offseason. They crashed out of the postseason. We didn't even get to them yesterday or today. Oklahoma City swept them. They won all 8 games against the Grizzlies this season. Going back to last season, Bill, if you add in those games, Oklahoma City has now won 13 straight against the Grizzlies. Zach Kleiman fired Taylor Jenkins with 9 games left. There's going to be a lot of conversation this offseason in the same way that the Bucks are going to be wrestling with should they trade Giannis. The conversation around Ja. Can you win with Ja? Should they trade Ja? Now, earlier this year, Zach Kleiman got his back up about this. I want to read you a quote from Zach Kleiman. He said, "I can't blame other executives for fantasizing about us trading Ja, but it's just that fantasy. Continue to underestimate Ja, this team, and this city, and we will let our performance on the floor speak for itself." Oh, that did not age well. "I'm not going to give this nonsense further oxygen and look forward to getting back to basketball." Bill, they're letting basketball speak for itself. With Ja, Triple J, and Bane over the last 5 years, they have won exactly one playoff series.
And now, John, if you are inclined to bet on these things and you want to bet on whether or not Ja Morant will be traded, he is a betting favorite to be moved. It's not as if you're getting plus 250 that he's going to start a season somewhere else. So, we were talking about a reset in Phoenix and a reset in Milwaukee. If you're going to move on from Ja Morant, and I'm not sure what the return is, like I'm not sure that you're getting something back that immediately makes you a contender, don't you have to consider just blowing the whole thing up? Just Triple J and Desmond Bane included, and just do because again, Memphis is one of these markets you're not going to recruit stars. You're going to draft them or you're going to trade for them. You're not going to have a free agency July, 5th, 2025, 26, 27 announcement where insert big time free agent is choosing to go to the Memphis Grizzlies. It's not one of those markets. If you're moving on from Ja, I think you have to at least entertain John just doing a full reset.
It's such a tricky offseason for Zach Kleiman, and he's put the whole focus on himself, right? I mean, he could have just fired Taylor Jenkins this offseason, and then people at least like a little distraction, right? Okay, well, it's on Taylor Jenkins. You're going to hire a new head coach. We'll see how it goes next year. Instead, everybody's looking at Zach Kleiman and what he's going to do because, I think that discussing whether or not you're going to move on from Ja makes sense because I love watching Ja, but he's just not out there enough. He's not a great shooter. His body isn't reliable because of the way that he plays. He's so athletic and so dynamic, but it puts himself at risk. Bill, this year he played 50 games. He missed 32. The last 4 seasons, he's missed 151 games. Last season, he played just 9 games between his shoulder injury and the 25-game suspension to start. He's got 3 years left at $126 million on his contract. All of a sudden you go, okay, on paper, I like the idea of Ja, but like if he's not a great shooter, do I want a guard who's not that available? And then on top of that, other decisions that Zach Kleiman has to make this offseason. Jaren Jackson Jr., if he makes All-NBA, which is possible, maybe even probable, not a lock, but I think he probably will, he will be Supermax eligible 5 years for $345 million. And then on top of that, Tomas Isalo, you had a 15-game sample size of him. They were 1-1 in the play-in, and then they got swept by Oklahoma City. You got to make a call on that, too. This is a critical offseason for the Grizzlies and Kleiman.
I don't think trading Ja's enough. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there is a return. Maybe there, but he's not durable. Let's just like put his off-court issues aside, which maybe they continue, maybe they didn't. It depends on your sort of take whatever your temperature and mileage is on finger guns and hand grenades, pantomime hand grenades. He's not. It's hard to even explain with a straight face. He's not durable enough to get the kind of return that you would want to get for someone who has his talent. And so what are you trading for Ja Morant that comes back in return if you pay Triple J and you sort of plug him into this team that makes you competitive in a Western Conference? It's only going to get more and more difficult. I don't know that it's a really tough spot to be in. I don't think it's as simple as you trade Ja and everything's okay.
No, I don't think so either. And I don't know what kind of market you have for John. Yes, the calculus here is awfully complicated for Zach Kleiman. Just real quick, I'm not an advocate for violence, Bill, but between you and me, I thought the grenade thing was kind of clever and pretty
You
funny.
did? You thought?
Yeah, I did. I laughed. It made me laugh. It was clever, and it did make me laugh because the guy can just not help himself. All right, let's take another break. And then on the other side, huge night in the NBA tonight, 3 potential closeout games, plus a critical Game 5 in a series that has been fantastic between the Clippers and the Nuggets. We'll take a look at all of that. This is Beyond the Arc on CBS Sports Network. All right, welcome back to Beyond the Arc. Some big NBA action tonight in the playoffs. 3 potential closeout games, Bill. We'll start with those before we get to Clippers and Nuggets Game 5. But you've got the Bucks. You actually asked me this. So the Pacers are up 3-1. The Knicks are up 3-1. Shouldn't be. They stole that game. Justice for the Pistons. And then the Celtics are also up 3-1. Which of these 3 teams do you think road teams has a chance to win tonight?
I will, man. So I want to tell you Milwaukee has a chance because Giannis is so great that he is more than capable of winning a game on his own, but it feels like they've just given up. They seem so dispirited. I'll go Pistons. And I don't know if that's just me wanting history to course correct a little more with a little more justice. I mean, and we discussed this on the podcast, they got robbed. I mean, they got robbed in that last game on that no call. It was ridiculous. And Knicks fans, they got robbed. Okay. It can be true, and you can still be a good basketball team. I think Detroit's been the better team for large stretches of the game. They're just young and inexperienced, and they haven't been able to close. They didn't close Game 1, and obviously they got some help in not closing that last game. I don't know if any of these teams win, but if it's anybody, I'll take Detroit.
Yeah, I'm out on the Magic because look, they've tried their formula. They have a theory of the case where they wanted to limit the Celtics in their 3-point shooting. They've done a really good job of it, and they still only won one game. The Bucks, as you mentioned, I think they're checked out. Dame went down. Bobby Portis had to do the in-game interview. He was completely deflated, completely dejected. You could see that whole team was shook. Doc talked about it afterwards. I feel bad for the Bucks. I feel bad for their fans. I just have a hard time believing that they're going to beat the Pacers in Indiana. In Indianapolis, where they're really good at home. They've been awesome at home. So yes, I'm on the Pistons here tonight. I'm not sure that they'll actually pull it out, but I want vengeance for what happened in game 4 because look, the Knicks it's been a really good series, and I wanted it to be, just from a selfish entertainment perspective, I wanted it to be 2-2 and for us to have a series here because I thought the Pistons have earned it. They have played really good basketball in this series. And yes, Knicks fans, I know that you want to say that the series was physical and they swallowed their whistle for much of the game. All that is true and all that is fine. But on a clear end of the game, buzzer beating play where the shot was altered and Josh Hart himself admitted that he made contact with Tim Hardaway Jr. and the official was booted the call so badly, I could not believe it. He was standing next to the guy. That should have been free throws. This series should be tied. I want the Pistons to win tonight. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
I like the passion. I like get angry.
Appreciate
it. Get into it.
What about with game 5 of the Clippers and the Nuggets? This has been the best series by far in the first round. 2-2. So aside from game 3, toss that out. Nuggets got blown off the Clippers floor. This has been fantastic. The other 3 games, Bill, could have really gone to either team. The Nuggets pulled out the last one on a buzzer beater that you and I were talking about this yesterday. So they win the game on a buzzer beater thanks to Aaron Gordon bailing them out. The Nuggets are celebrating. They're thrilled. They almost blew a 22-point lead. The only person who was stoic on the bench was Joker, who looked like somebody had taken his lunch money.
I mean, he was so mad that they almost gave it. Let me ask you a question. I want to ask you an eye test question if you agree with this, because you may not. And I was having to start with some NBA buddies. I got different responses. I think the Clippers have clearly looked like the better basketball team. Should have won game 1. They clearly look. To me, it's very much really good basketball team against Nikola Jokic and sort of like picking up his teammates. Do you see it the same way? Because I had a couple NBA buddies who did, and a couple who were like, no, man, the Nuggets have looked good. I don't think the Nuggets look good, even though the series is 2-2.
There were moments in, I think, big chunks of game 4 where the Nuggets did look good, but they did blow that 22-point lead. You know what this reminds me of? And this is a conversation that we were having after the Lakers game where J.J. Redick got a lot of criticism, rightly so, for playing his entire unit, not going to any bench minutes in the second half of the last game. The Nuggets have a similar bench problem, Bill, as opposed to the Clippers that are a full team. And we always talk about in the postseason how teams shorten their rotations. Well, the Clippers are still, Ty Lue is still rolling out a bunch of guys. Oklahoma City is still rolling out a bunch of guys. And the Nuggets and the Lakers are looking around going, man, we would kill for one extra bench guy.
Oh, 100%. And this is the thing about Jokic that's amazing. I've come to this conclusion. I don't think the team he won with was that good a few years ago. I mean, when a team wins a championship, you give credit to everybody. And in rep, the coach is fired. His co-stars aren't stars. Certainly Michael Porter Jr. is not. And so this is like, I love this series in part because it's a reminder to me of how great Jokic is, how much he makes everybody around him better. I think this Clippers team I think they're still going to win, but Jokic is a wild card.
Yeah, it's going to be a fantastic game tonight. I can't wait for this. We're into a 3-game series between the Clippers and the Nuggets. It's lived up to the hype. We're going to be talking about that on CBS Sports HQ tonight. That's going to do it for us for right now, but we will be back at it tonight live on YouTube right after the Celtics Magic Game 5. So come and join us for that. We're also going to talk about Game 5 between the Knicks and the Pistons and the Pacers and the Bucks. We'll see if any of those teams can win a game on the road. Come and join us on YouTube after that Celtics Magic game at Beyond the Arc CBS. But for now, for our NBA insider, Bill Ryder, I'm John Gonzalez. Thanks so much for tuning in, everybody. We'll see you tonight.